So witnesses testifying before the January 6th Select Committee today about the pressure and intimidation they face from the highest levels of government. Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney saying we cannot let America become a nation of conspiracy theories and thug violence. Asted Herndon, Ellie Honig, S.E. Cupp, Alice Stewart, all back with me. Asted, when Trump's relentless pressure campaign didn't work, that's when really the terrorizing began. We heard about the death threats. We heard about the home break-ins. We heard about the constant harassment. Is that the cost to standing up to the ex-president?
It is we've seen this over and over, the specifically weaponized harassment that comes from standing up to, comes from standing up to the president. And it can be active or it can be passive. It's simply doing anything that is outside of the purview of what Donald Trump wants would invite harassment, specifically from the media outlets and conservative sources who have pushed conspiracy theories, who have pushed lies, who have pushed harassment on individuals who are frankly doing the yeoman's work of American democracy. We are talking about people here who have taken it upon themselves to actually hold up the tenets of our government and as a reaction to doing their job, experience these things specifically targeted at them from the highest levels of government. I think that is not a feature, but a bug of, not a bug, but a feature of Donald Trump's administration, where we have seen this over and over and over to former friends who became enemies, to longtime enemies, to media,
he made them enemies.
Yes.
Former friends who told the truth.
Who simply dared to tell the truth. Yeah. That itself is a disqualifying factor.
Yeah. But you didn't actually have to stand up to the president to be the target of his ire. I mean, you just had to be a perceived opponent. He told people all the time, over years, conditioning this environment, that his opponents were enemies of the state, that such and such group wasn't to be believed. Go after your opponents, I'll cover your legal costs if you take them out. He conditioned this environment and radicalized a group of people to do this on his behalf, in his name. And I just want to say something about Shay and her mom and the other women that were mentioned today and the harassment and targeted harassment they got. Because this isn't just around the election issue. I remember in 2020, I wrote about the harassment of women public health administrators who make a lot of money, they weren't big name people. They were just doing their jobs, but because Trump told his base that COVID was a cold and taking precautions were now an assault on your freedom, they got death threats, rape fantasies, awful kinds of harassment that specifically target women in a way.
Raffensperger talked about that.
Raffensperger talked about it, and it's part of the hatred and the harassment that Trump has seeded, that women get it, because he's done it. He's done it to other women. I've been the target of his harassment online. Women get a particular kind of attention from Trump and his supporters. And I think it needs calling out, because women have been going through this, not just for election stuff, but through the whole course of his administration.
Yeah, but this certainly ramps it up. This takes it to a completely different level. My next question is for you, Alice. And I just want to quote the former Philadelphia commissioner here, Al Schmidt. He was on with my colleague Jake Tapper earlier, and he says that Trump's election lie is it has nothing to do with being a Republican at all. It has to do with whether you're willing to lie for the former president or not. Right? Is that
Absolutely. Look, these are Republican election officials in many states that stood up for the right thing. Brad Raffensperger has said from the very beginning, I'm going to do my constitutional duty. I'm going to follow the law. We are a nation of laws. We are not a nation of the current elected president being able to decide if they will continue to be the elected president. We're a nation of laws. Brad Raffensperger wanted the president to win. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp wanted him to win. Bowers in Arizona wanted him to win. But they did their constitutional duty by certifying the electorals as they came in.
The point, this has nothing to do with being a Republican, he says. This is whether you were willing to lie for the former president or not.
Absolutely. And they were not going to do so. And look, this is a far-reaching consequences. A small number that didn't get a lot of attention, but Brad Raffensperger pointed out today, the president's tone and demeanor and the wrath of a lot of things that he doesn't like when people do things, and his base goes after critics. That took a toll on him. Brad Raffensperger traveled around with the president in 2020 before that election and saw the vitriol that Republican voters had against the president for his demeanor and his tone and the way he talked and the way he treated people. That took a toll on him running in 2020 as well as the senators running in the midterm elections. Raffensperger said specifically, looking at the numbers, 28,000 Republicans went to the polls in Georgia and voted down ballot. They did not vote for Donald Trump. They voted down ballot. And these are Republicans who were fed up with this tone and tenor. They were willing to support Republicans down ballot, but are not going to do that moving forward. So that's a lesson to Republicans moving forward. Voters are tired of it.
Listen, Ellie, all of these threats of violence and harassment and on, it's horrific. But was there any case for anything that was against the law today that was illegal?
Well, you know what's so interesting to me, over the course of the last several weeks while these hearings are happening, the focus for potential prosecution has shifted. We used to be focused on January 6th itself. Was this legally incitement of a riot, right? The only people who've been prosecuted are the people who went in on January 6th. Now the focus is really on the much broader conspiracy, the effort to defraud the United States, to block the electoral certification. I think that's actually a better and smarter way for prosecutors to look at this. I think charging Donald Trump with the incitement of a riot is a very, very difficult charge. But I think if we're talking about a conspiracy to steal a fair election from this country, which has been charged before, now the case for that to me is really sort of crystallizing. And I think we are seeing vastly increased pressure on the United States Department of Justice.
Well, even folks at Fox News today were saying this is bad. This looks real bad for the president. I mean, you know it's bad when they're admitting it.
What she said.
At the same time, you have Trump-endorsed backers winning across the country. I mean, we should be, I think we have to be clear that this is not only a legal question, but a political question. And this is not just, I think it's actually flattening it to say that Donald Trump himself was the one who was inside. You know, Donald Trump has mobilized a portion of America that is not insignificant. That is a real electorate in this country. And the message that a lot of Republican electors have gotten from this, some have certainly stepped away, have said this has gone too far. Some are also scared of the real base that is true, and that we know the vitriol that comes from that. And so there is a part of the so the same type of belief in democracy that we see from Shea and we see from others has to become true among the electorate in which Donald Trump really motivates, or this will be a consistent political problem. He is weaponizing voters, right? Not just abstract Americans, but people who really have an impact.
Well, the problem is that there is one party in this country that has pretty much abandoned the truth. They've abdicated the truth in reality. And then you have another party, right? And people say, oh, they've gone too far left. Oh, listen, we dealt with going too far left or too far right. But when you abdicate, when you abandon the truth, how do you turn back from that? How do you stand up and fight for people who are not standing up for truth?
When a gingermint is a USB port, some nefarious, completely made up lie that you weaponize with no consequences, no care for what's about to happen because of it.
Yeah. So here's the quote. Be glad it's 2020 and not 1920. That's what Shea Moss was told. So she talks about being an only child, an only grandchild. She told the committee that she loved her job until it was taken away from her by, quote, a few people who decided that their lie was more important than her life. She and her family were subjected to a disgusting campaign of lies and outrageous accusations, death threats, and being told, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920.
Ruby Freeman and Shea Freeman Moss and one other gentleman quite obviously surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine.
We had at least 18,000, that's on tape. We had them counted very painstakingly, 18,000 voters having to do with Ruby Freeman. She's a vote scammer, a professional vote scammer and hustler.
I mean, come on. It's just disgusting. There's no other way to put it. It's gross. It's disgusting. A hustler. Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani revealing themselves for who they are. They're the ones who were trying to pull the scam and the hustle. Listen to Ruby Freeman. That's Shay's mom. She had to go into hiding after the FBI told her that she would not be safe, and this is in her own home, and just safe in general until at least the inauguration.
Now I won't even introduce myself by my name anymore. I get nervous when I bump into someone I know in the grocery store who says my name. I'm worried about who's listening. I get nervous when I have to give my name for food orders. I'm always concerned of who's around me. I've lost my name and I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security, all because a group of people, starting with number 45 and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shay, to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen.
Imagine that, to be afraid to even say your own name. Think about it. And think about the courage it took for Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss to go before the January 6th committee and stand up for what is right, to stand up against the liars and the bullies who put their lives in danger. Liz Cheney, another principled American, calling out the lies that we've seen lead to violence.
I would urge all of those watching today to focus on the evidence the committee will present. Don't be distracted by politics. This is serious. We cannot let America become a nation of conspiracy theories and thug violence.
And she's right. Don't be distracted by the politics. This is not about, right versus left. It's not that. This is about our democracy. This is about calling out the lies and who's doing it. Quite frankly, that's Donald Trump and members of the Republican Party and the ones who are not saying anything, who are allowing this to happen. She said a nation of conspiracy theories. It's a nation of conspiracy theories and thug violence, like the threats against Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers, who refused to play along with the plan to decertify his state's election results, only to be harassed by protesters outside his home, calling him a pervert and a pedophile. Even his gravely ill daughter harassed.
It is a tenet of my faith that the Constitution is divinely inspired of my most basic foundational beliefs. And so for me to do that because somebody just asked me to is foreign to my very being. I will not do it.
Thug politics, like the attacks on Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who refused the then president's demand that he find 11,780 votes.
Eventually, my wife started getting the text, and hers typically came in as sexualized texts, which were disgusting. Some people broke into my daughter-in-law's home, and my son has passed, and she's a widow and has 2 kids, and so we're very concerned about her safety also.
Conservative, Trump-supporting Republicans standing up for what is right, refusing to break the law or betray their oaths. Shay Moss and her mother, Ruby Freeman, 2 women of integrity who testified in spite of the threats against them. Thanks to all of them, things weren't worse. I know they're bad now, but at least they're not worse because of those people. But who's going to stand up for the right thing the next time? That is the question. Lots to discuss. Estate Herndon is here, Ellie Honig, Essie Cupp, Alice Stewart. Good to see all of you. Compelling testimony today. I certainly think so. Essie, I want to get your take on this and everybody's take really, but I'm going to start with you first. You have the integrity of Rusty Bowers. You have Shay and her mom, Lady Ruby, which is trending on social media today, and every right. If you're going to pay attention to something on social media, it should be stuff like that, but refusing to be pulled into this scheme.
Yeah. I got to be honest, I had kind of forgotten what it sounded like when principled conservative Republicans
really
put their convictions ahead of Trump. We hear it from time to time. We hear it from Liz Cheney. Hear it from folks like Adam Kinzinger. But you don't hear it all that often. And I was reminded that these election officials, the Secretary of State, you know, that you didn't know about until January 6th and everything that happened, everything they did to prevent worse. I am grateful for those people, and it gives me some sense of hope that there are more out there like them, because they want to try it again. Trump and Republicans want to keep trying to break our democracy, and they're going to vote for secretaries of state who want to keep breaking our elections and weakening the integrity of them. So these are the people we need more of, and I hope there are more of them.
And you said you hadn't heard it in a while, but I think we also need to be reminded of it. We need to remind our audience too that you are a Republican.
Well, yes, I'm a conservative, and I felt like an orphan and very alone in, you know, thinking what Trump was doing was awful, and not conservative, by the way, not at all conservative. And so to hear two conservatives who I know wanted Trump to be president, who are, you know, conservative to their core, say, I wouldn't do this. You just haven't heard a lot of that conviction over the past 5 years.
And we saw a lot of really emotional, compelling testimony, if you want to call it that, today. And we did hear from professional vote scammers. We did hear from them. It wasn't Shea Moss, it wasn't Lady Ruby, it wasn't Brad Raffensperger, it wasn't Bowers. We heard from professional vote scammers. This was the former President Trump and Rudy Giuliani, people involved in surreptitious, questionable activity. And it wasn't the four people I named. It is the former president and Rudy Giuliani. You look at Shea Moss. She was not a professional speaker. She was nervous. She did not want to be there. And she gave such compelling testimony about how she loved her job. She loved going to work. She loved helping older people vote. She loved giving out. She would
drive to give older people their absentee ballots, like in the hospital.
She loved giving out her business card so they could call her and ask information. That's what our election system is filled with. People like her across the country that make sure that our elections are free and fair. I was Deputy Secretary of State in Arkansas. We had people in our elections division just like her that woke up every day doing their constitutional duty to execute free and fair elections. And it's a darn shame that she was chased out of her job because of someone who was so obsessed with trying to win an election that was clearly lost. And it's a shame.
I know you're a lady. But it's after 10 o'clock. You can say it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. It is a damn shame. I'll say it for you. But Ellie, you said that we got a glimpse into this is a coup attempt, right? The strategy behind this coup attempt: fake it and then hope it works.
Yeah. Look, I know that there's a certain population of people out there who will never believe the truth, never want to see the truth, who will cling to conspiracy theories. But I do think these hearings matter in a big way because we now know the truth. I don't think there's any serious person who can seriously question, who can seriously argue there was meaningful election fraud in 2020. I mean, how can you watch these hearings and possibly argue that with a straight face? So I do think it's advancing the cause of truth here. And they ripped the veil right off of the strategy today. We heard from insiders that what they would do is make it up, throw it out there, hope it gets echoed in social media or wherever until it just sort of blends in and gets some air of authority. It's bogus, and it's the way that myths are made.
Can we talk about this fake election scheme? Because that was really, I think, the big news today, because we sort of got an inside glimpse of that. Pushing this fake election scheme, Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. CNN caught up with Senator Johnson today. He acknowledges that he was aware his chief of staff reached out to the Pence office, tried to deliver the slate of electors, but contends that he has no idea who was behind it and had no involvement. Watch this, and then we'll get to you, Asted.
Why was he even asking for that?
Because somebody delivered this to our office and asked to deliver that to the vice president.
Did you support his efforts to try to get those slates to the vice president?
No, I had no knowledge of this.
Who's the person that delivered?
I had no involvement in an ultimate slate of electors. I had no idea this thing needed to be delivered to us. Got delivered staff to staff. My chief of staff did the right thing. Contacted the vice president's staff. They said didn't want it, so we didn't deliver it.
Who's the person?
Again, that's the end of the story.
Who's the person that delivered it to your office?
I have no idea.
How's this look?
I mean, it belies every step of belief here. We're talking about the chief of staff to the senator. This is not something that is that even invokes, a credulous response. I think what the importance of today's hearing was expanding it out of just January 6th, right? I think we got it better. We got an idea of just how many levels there were to a real concerted effort from this administration to subvert democracy at every step, right? To pressure state election to pressure state legislators, to pressure election workers through conspiracy, and then January 6th is a culmination of that, with violence coming
this
to
was
the
fraudulent.
Capitol.
These were not real electors. This is fake.
Absolutely. I am saying that we know, to Ellie's point about facts, right? Journalists talk about having a first draft of history. I think this is a real place where these hearings are doing a kind of journalistic service too. There's no question here of evidence or facts, right? These are not things that are really disputed even by the other side, right? They have not brought and said, this isn't true. That these are the response you get from the senator there is just one of throwing their hands up. They're not even contesting it on the level of fact, because we know here that every piece of evidence tells us that the president and all those around him did not care at all about not the basic tenets of democracy, the basic will of the American voters, and even more so than that, we're actively working to subvert both of those.
As they would say in a court of law, this defies credulity, I think. Is that right? Is that a right term?
And let me add to that. As a juror, you have the right to reject someone's testimony. You have the right to say, that's not true. We can use our common sense. I think we should use it in evaluating these hearings.
And as Bill...
The January 6th committee hearing today from Shay Moss and her mother, Ruby Freeman, two black election workers in Atlanta during the 2020 election. Former President Trump and his allies put them both at the center of their unhinged, racist lies about massive voter fraud in Georgia. I want to discuss their emotional testimony with CNN senior political analyst Nia Malika Henderson and CNN legal analyst Joey Jackson. Good to have both of you on. Thank you. Good evening. So, Nia, I want you to listen to the testimony. This is Shay Moss talking about the threats that she received after President Trump targeted her over his election lies. Nia, this is a woman who loved her job, was proud to be a Fulton County election worker, and it ended up like this. It is despicable.
I mean, loved her job, loves her country, loves democracy, and knows about the history of this country, particularly this country in terms of black people and the right to vote and how hard fought that has been over these last many decades in this country. I thought about what happened today almost 60 years ago, and that was the death of 3 civil rights workers who were going down to Mississippi to try to register black people to vote. That is the history that certainly Shay knows about. Shay is trying to uphold democracy, spread the word about voting, register black people to vote, talk about the importance of voting to all folks in her community. So it was disheartening and frightening to hear about her experience, the sort of racialized, violent threats that she got. This idea that, let's be glad it's not 1920, and all of the things that she had to go through because she was targeted by this president, people coming after her verbally, her grandmother, her mother as well, and them essentially saying they didn't really want to participate in the same way because of the way that they were spotlighted and targeted by this president and his followers. So it was very emotional, obviously, for her, and I think emotional for a lot of viewers who watched her testimony today.
I want you to hear from Mom. This is the committee playing audio of Trump attacking Ruby Freeman. Watch.
We had at least 18,000, that's on tape. We had them counted very painstakingly, 18,000 voters having to do with Ruby Freeman. She's a vote scammer, a professional vote scammer and hustler.
Donald Trump attacked you and your mother using her name 18 times on that call. 18 times. Ms. Moss, can you describe what you experienced listening to former President Trump attack you and your mother in a call with the Georgia Secretary of State?
I felt horrible. I felt like it was all my fault. Like, if I would have never decided to be an elections worker.
Joey, let's just be honest. These crazy-ass people believe that. They believe the 1920 stuff. They believe all of the stuff that Trump has said, that she's a scammer and she's a hustler. She and her mom were attacked by Trump, then faced serious and racist threats. People harassed them and other family members at their homes. She had to move out of her house for her own safety. What responsibility does the former president have here?
I think a lot of responsibility. I think everyone should be responsible for using language that's clear, that's precise, that's truthful. And I think the truth has gotten lost. We could sit here all night talking about First Amendment, talking about opinions, talking about the distinction between that and defamation, talking. But the reality is that when you have that bully pulpit and you're talking about things that are factually inaccurate, and you're not only impairing and impugning someone's reputation who should be celebrated for being an election worker, who should be celebrated by being on the front lines and attempting to protect the propriety and integrity of the election, and instead you're denigrating them with no factual basis at all. And so I think, the former president and politicians alike have to be very careful when you use language and how that could impair and affect and really just destroy people. And that's clearly what we saw happen there, Don.
Each of us who's sitting here tonight, people of color, we know what it's like being attacked by the president, the former president of this country. I have personal experience. I think you have personal experience as well. And the concern that goes with you personally or with me personally and our families. What these women were experiencing was real. Look, I can handle it. I don't like it. But it's not what they signed up for, Nia. It's not what these women signed up for.
And it has completely changed their lives. I mean, Shay talked about not wanting her mother to call out her name in the grocery store, not wanting to go to the grocery store for fear that her mother might call out her name. And we all know how important names are and naming is for African Americans. So that was poignant and sad to hear her say that. Her mother, somebody who built this business down in Georgia, and now, lives in fear because of what the former president did in maligning her in a racist way.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. Be well.